We're now delighted to be joined over the telephone by our guest for this afternoon, Her Excellency Ambassador Soad Shalaby, the former Assistant Foreign Minister. A very good afternoon to you, Madam Ambassador.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Madam Ambassador, for joining us this afternoon. And let me start by asking you, how do you see the importance of President Sisi's tour in the Southern African countries that he has recently embarked on, ma'am?
This Africa is almost like a quantum leap for bilateral relations between the three countries, and also delivering the message from the COMESA that Egypt is supporting the new presidency, the Zambian presidency of the COMESA. It was an excellent trip for boosting the relationship between Egypt and the three southern countries who are members of SADC and who have been historically linked with Egypt, but at the same time there was no presidential visits since 1970s, 75, when they gained their independence.
Right. Right. Madam Ambassador, now the President's visit is the first of its kind, like you said, Angola, Zambia and Mozambique. What do you see the reason behind the choice of these countries for the President's visit?
Well, the Angolan President and the Mozambican President visited Egypt, and they presented the invitation to President Sisi, and because of COVID, he was not able to travel, and also during the past 2 years, Egypt was the president of COMESA. That's why it was time to deliver, to move the presidency from Egypt to Zambia.
Yes.
So that is why he linked the three visits together, and it was meant to open the markets, trade markets for Egyptian products, and also to encourage Egyptian investors and Mozambican and Angolan investors to come to Egypt and finance mega projects in these countries, like we did in Tanzania.
Absolutely. Now, Madam Ambassador, during this tour, as you said, Egypt handed over the presidency of COMESA to Zambia 2 years after Egypt's assumption of it. What are some of the most important achievements of Egypt during its presidency of COMESA?
Egypt was focused on the strategy of the industrial strategy, which started 2017 until 2026, and this is what Egypt was focusing on, because the slogan before was "Made in COMESA," and this is the new slogan is, of course, the green economy and the green projects. But Egypt has focused mainly on health also, because they have introduced the sector of health in the secretariat, so that the Egypt and African countries can produce medications and vaccinations. And this is like one of the important sectors that Egypt has introduced, and also it has introduced short and long-term executive plans for industrial and trade, and also focus on infrastructure and integration. Because if we promote investments, we have to supply financial guarantees for investors, and this is a priority for COMESA in order to encourage investors. And we have in Egypt here, we have the Center for Encouraging Investment for COMESA. That is why we have to reinforce this the capacity of investors in Africa. And of course, we did a feasibility study to link Lake Victoria and the Mediterranean through the Nile River. That is important to facilitate the movement of trade and the navigation routes. And so this is a focus on infrastructure and navigation in order also to supply, to facilitate the roads for the import and export of goods between the different African countries, south and north and east. Also, there was a focus on digital transformation and financial inclusion initiatives. All these initiatives were presented by Egypt during its COMESA presidency.
Absolutely. How do you see, Madam Ambassador, Egypt's interest on restoring and strengthening relations with African countries across the continent, and how can such collaboration between other African countries really assist, the African continent rather as a whole, in furthering its sustainable development agenda?
Well, it's very important to use natural resources of the different countries. Like, for instance, Mozambique and Angola, they are very rich countries with natural resources. But still, there are lots of ways and means of using these natural resources in order to produce goods, and also to use to benefit these countries by exporting these natural resources, manufacturing them actually instead of exporting them without manufacture. So this is labor intensive. The African countries have to use the labor intensive projects in order to use the cheap labor that they have in their countries. So there has to be focus on training. There has to be focus on exportation. Use of natural resources and exporting manufacturing goods. And this is the only road to sustainable development. Of course, there has to be stability and security.
Yes.
So the fight against terrorism, the fight against insecurity, there has to be, in order for the investment to gain its benefits, there has to be stability and security in the countries that the investors are going to invest in, especially in the Southern African region.
Right, absolutely. Madam Ambassador Soad Shalaby, our former Assistant Foreign Minister and our guest for this afternoon, I'd like to thank you very, very much, ma'am, for your time and your insight and for joining us on our edition of Cairo Local Time.